I like kind of like reject the binary that like you either are a naturalistic writer who writes plays with a working sink on stage, or you are a theatrical playwright who writes plays about the moon. And like I love to like combine the elements of theatricality and like elements of spectacle and meta theatricality with real like finely observed human behavior, because I think there's like nothing funnier and sadder than the way that people actually are and actually speak.
That is so interesting, because I think I think audiences can sometimes have certain expectations, certain generic expectations that, and when we thwart them, that sometimes can be, a challenge for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. And, in my classes, my students are sort of like really, one of the things we talk about in this history of directing class I teach is sort of like, all right, what's naturalism? How is it different from realism, right? How did it sort of grow into expressionism? What the hell are we doing on stage now? And what, the conclusion that we come to is that frequently plays that, my students in which my students traffic are usually more than one thing.
Yeah. I feel I got onto, well, I was about to start this anecdote that way. I got onto TikTok, and I'm not making videos, but I'm watching videos on TikTok because I feel really strongly that like the theater of 20 years from now is going to be really TikTok inflected. Mm-hmm. So I think the theater of like, millennials, and I guess now we're getting to like Gen Zers, like it kind of makes sense to me that there's a blending of genre, because that to me feels like the internet. Like the internet feels like it is the collapsing of form and boundaries, and like it is like an article about climate collapse in 2040 with like a picture of Kourtney Kardashian's like baby like interposed on top of it. And so yeah, like that legitimately makes sense to me, because something that I butt up against a lot in my own writing is that even just like that like linear storytelling often feels like really inadequate. And so that's like when I kind of reach for meta theatrical stuff. And so yeah, that like it makes sense to me that I mean my like Will Arbery, who was a Kenyan with me, is I think an incredible example of someone who and Gracie Gardner too, like are incredible examples of people who can write naturalism, observe human behavior, and then like go to another place, like go to a theatrical place. And that just feels like real life right now.
Yes, because linear storytelling is frequently not the way we experience the world anymore.
No. Yeah. I don't know when the last time that was, but no, certainly not.
And so in a weird way, like I'm really interested in what you're talking about, how like, because we live so, especially during COVID times, we live so robustly on the internet that like life sort of feels like a pastiche of formal sort of expressions.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I think your play For Annie, and I think the Dr. Bronner play borrow from that. Not necessarily that they are a pastiche of certain aesthetics, but in that they are, in some ways, they borrow collage formatting.
Yeah.
And I think the common critique of collage is that, well, it doesn't present a cohesive whole. But what I find in your plays, as well as in my daily life, is that like, no, the collage is pretty well synthesized.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was a crazy thing about the produced version of Bronner, which is different than the version that's in the Cincinnati Review, which is all the pieces by me. But in production, a lot of the monologues that I wrote that are personal to me are replaced by monologues that are written by the cast. Mm-hmm. And the director, Sami Zeisel, and I wondered because it was really important to us that performers in the cast have they had a length limit of like, your piece needs to be 2 minutes because otherwise we'll be here all night. But other than that, they have absolute final say over what they do and say. And so we worried, like, will the pieces be so similar that the play is boring? And that just wasn't the case at all. Like, it was 10 people who did not know each other, And yeah, the way you put it is exactly right. It's synthesized into a whole that was like made up of all of these individual perspectives.
But in a weird way, that itself is a metaphor for a bottle of Dr. Bronner's soap. Right?
Yeah.
Because like that thing is covered with text
yes.
that borrows from several sources.
So many sources.
Yeah.
Yes.